Welcome back to the KURE Lab, where we talk all things oxygen and the wonders that putting a bit more oxygen into your system can do. Today we're going to dive into the world of live blood analysis, and we're going to talk to a live blood analyst about the incredible effects that KURE can have on your blood, which, as we know, carries all that incredible oxygen around your body. Now, we told Caroline Mansfield that KURE was an oxygen supplement which contained 10 times more oxygen than regular water. But I'm not afraid to say she was, at first anyway, a bit of a skeptic, and probably with good reason. Before KURE, there had never been an effective oxygen water. But she agreed to have a closer look, albeit under some duress, and we're glad she did, because what she saw blew her mind. Well, Caroline, wonderful to see you again. As always, let's get straight into this. Can we do a finger prick analysis to start, please?
Yeah, let's get started on it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just give your finger a quick wipe, first of all, just to clean off any debris.
There might be quite a lot of debris there, I'm afraid.
You've been travelling through London.
Oh, I've lived hard.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick pinprick of blood, so you're going to feel a sharp prick. Okay, so we're just going to put a bit of oil onto the condenser because this helps refract the light because it's a dark field microscope.
So what are you doing here, Caroline?
Yeah, so we're just putting some oil onto the condenser, and then we're going to put the slide onto the microscope.
Right.
And we're going to see the picture of your blood.
Okay, fingers crossed. No bad news, okay?
Ooh. Very nice. Okay, so the first thing we're noticing is that your red blood cells, these are the little bubbles, they're moving very nicely, very fast, which is what we want to see is blood flow. So let's just go in for a closer look. And we're just going to let that settle. If you just one moment to see where we are here.
I think the really interesting point to note here is that I've been drinking KURE all week.
Yeah.
And I've had about 4 or 5 bottles today. So there is a lot of KURE in my system at the moment. I'll be really interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, well, immediately we can see really good blood flow. We don't see this in everybody straight away. So what this is telling us is that the outside of your red blood cells have a net negative charge, and these are all very nicely charged up. It tells us that, you know, we want the cells to have that net negative charge so they don't become attracted to each other. So they do flow around the body, delivering oxygen and nutrients and taking away waste products. So, I mean, it's moving so quickly here that we're just waiting for it to settle, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look, and this looks vastly different to the last gentleman that we looked at.
Yeah,
whose blood
totally.
was basically still, wasn't it?
It was still, it was coagulated. He had what we call rouleau, which is stacking together the red blood cells. So his zeta potential, was very poor. So he'd lost the charge on the outside of his red blood cells. And this can happen for a number of reasons, due to lack of oxygen, due to stress, due to dehydration.
Yeah.
It can be poor diet choices can affect, your blood as well. You could be reacting to certain foods that you're having on a daily basis. There's a number of different reasons. But this is a really good picture, to start off with. We just need to wait for it to settle down.
And so just for the folks watching at home, what are we actually looking at here? What are these small circles that we see, and what are these bright lights?
Okay, so basically the circles you can see, these are your red blood cells. And when we're looking at red blood cells, we want them to be roughly the same shape and size. We want them to not be attracted to each other because they have to go around the body, around the down to the microcapillary, delivering oxygen and nutrients and taking away waste products. That's their job. And if that job does not happen, then we start to get stagnation in the body, and this is where disease starts to settle in.
Right.
If the blood's not moving to deliver the nutrients that the body and tissue needs. So if the organs not work, if the nutrients and oxygen aren't being delivered, then the cells aren't going to be healthy.
Right.
And then that organ won't be healthy, and that organ system won't be healthy, and then the whole body at some point. So, but also with we want the blood to be flowing because then we're delivering oxygen to the brain, for example. We want the so we're
Even
going
in my case, do you think
to
oxygen's getting to my brain?
So when we have more oxygen to the brain, then we're going to be thinking more clearly,
Yeah.
and we're going to be very witty, right? So I think your
Present company
oxygen's
excluded, of course.
so, that it makes a huge difference. Also, oxygen is so important for energy. So it helps produce ATP in the cells, the mitochondria. So all these things, it's just helping us to feel more energized and, clear thinking when we
Wow,
drink oxygen water.
fascinating.
Mm.
Wow, okay. Well, look, that's a really great snapshot. I really kind of am pleased to see that my blood looks so good.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, you remember the first time that I did my live blood analysis here.
Yes.
This is a very, very different picture.
Yeah, it is actually. So you've been doing improvements into your life. We've just been drinking more oxygen water.
Mainly it's the cure, I must say. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the first time I was here, we did see a lot of that rouleau. We saw that stacking of blood cells, which you told me at the time is not a good sign.
Yeah.
And now we're really seeing these cells
Really
repelling each other, moving so quickly. I mean, I remember last time we looked at mine, there wasn't that movement in my blood.
No, there wasn't. And I think also you had just come off a flight, I
Correct.
think. Yeah, so you'd been involved in a lot of, air travel, dehydration, electromagnetic frequencies going through airports. There's a lot that was going on, time zone changes. So I think, your blood, you're looking more settled here. And yeah, it's probably more of a true picture of how your blood is.
Okay, well, look, let's get on with it because I've got so many questions that I'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
Why don't we start? What is live blood analysis? People may have heard of the term, but be quite unfamiliar with what it is. How does it work? And why is blood such a great indicator of overall health?
Yeah, so live blood analysis, let's say what it isn't. It's not a diagnostic tool. So what it's doing is it's giving us a picture of what's going on in your body based on your lifestyle and your sort of food choices. Um, and the reason it's so important is because we can see things in the blood that maybe a blood test wouldn't pick up on. So we're looking at subclinical levels before they get to the point where they're going to show up in a blood test and we've got a problem. So it's very subtle. We can see certain nutritional deficiencies, how the immune system's functioning, so how the liver's functioning as well. If there's any liver stress, that'll show up in the blood. All of these things just give an overall picture. And I think for people, seeing is believing, because when people see their blood for the first time, they realize that they're responsible for all this this world within them, and they start to make better choices as opposed to just having a blood test with numbers on a page.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's much more easy to understand when you can see something visually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, so tell us, what were your first thoughts when you were approached by KURE to actually have a look at live blood before and after drinking KURE? What were the first things that went through your mind?
I thought, well, this would be very interesting to see, how oxygen water would affect the blood, because I know the importance, of oxygen for many different reasons in relation to the blood, and one of the most important things is that when you drink oxygen water, it helps with the surface charge in the surface membrane. So it helps with that repelling of the red blood cells. So that was the main thing I was interested in, see if it would help with circulation. So yeah, they came along, and I think there was four people from KURE Water at the time, and it was just fascinating. So we did everyone's baseline to see what their blood lot was before drinking KURE Water. They hadn't drunk any KURE Water that day.
Yeah.
And then we took everyone's blood after they'd drunk anything between 500 mils to 2 litres. Everyone did a different quantity. And then we looked at their blood after, I think it was about half an hour. And I was absolutely blown away at the change in the blood, a bit earlier, as we did with the other gentleman today. Because I don't see anything switch the blood up that quickly. Usually when we see coagulation and rouleau, erythrocyte aggregation with a lot of congestion, these things take time with diet and lifestyle to change. They could take, they will change because the blood does change. A red blood cell lasts 120 days.
Okay.
So we do see change, but it takes time. But this was almost like an immediate change.
Wow.
So I hadn't seen that with anything any other supplement or anything that we've taken, clients have taken over the years.
So you've never seen such dramatic changes from a single intervention in your career?
No, not at all. The only time I've seen it, which isn't what I've done, is if you look at someone has IV infusions, because you're actually introducing extra volume of liquid into the blood.
Yeah.
So then you will see, a switch up
Okay.
in the blood viscosity. So it was similar to that.
Okay, so what that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that telling you that, I mean, we've established scientifically that KURE contains 10 times more oxygen than regular water.
Yeah.
It has 120.25 milligrams per litre of dissolved oxygen. Most water has between 6.5 and 8.5 milligrams of dissolved oxygen per litre. So are you comfortable to say, on the basis of what you've seen, that the oxygen inside each and every bottle of KURE does indeed make its way into your body when you drink it?
Oh, it definitely does. I mean, these are nano bubbles of oxygen, so they're infusing into the tissue before you've even reached digestion anyway. It's going, through everywhere. It's going through your body because it's a nano size. So, but also going through digestion, which has been shown in many studies, it's almost like a superior way because it's going straight to the blood system in a way that a lot of people don't breathe properly. So they're not always getting the correct amount of oxygen per breath. People hyperventilating or they're stuck in fight or flight.
Yep.
So they're breathing more from the chest as opposed to the diaphragm.
Right.
So this is just giving extra oxygen in a different way, so
Okay.
the body can deliver oxygen.
So even if something takes your breath away, you might actually have high levels of oxygen, nevertheless.
Yes.
Okay. So what does oxygen deficient blood look like? What are the potential consequences of having low oxygen saturation in the blood? And are there any kind of particular patterns or commonalities that you see in the blood of people who might be stressed or fatigued or unwell?
Yeah, definitely. So someone who has low oxygen or, they are not well, then the picture we would see would be a lot of coagulation. So what's called as the zeta potential has dropped out. So the outside of the red blood cells would start, they're losing that net negative charge. So they start to collapse and, coagulate in with each other. So, someone who's not well for, various reasons, the oxygen or the blood cells won't be circulating as efficiently. So they're not delivering that oxygen and nutrients and taking away waste products. So energy levels will be on the floor. People have fatigue, brain fog. The blood is so important for helping with these conditions. Especially someone, say, with diabetes who may have poor circulation. Drinking KURE water would really help boost that circulation for them. And we know that circulation is a big problem for people with diabetes.
Yeah.
Just to deliver the oxygen, to the microcapillary to help keep the tissue healthy.
Yeah, wow. That's absolutely fascinating.
Mm.
And so being a researcher, I know that you wouldn't have just presumed that KURE was unique in its ability to do this. And I'm confident in assuming, aren't I, that you would have also tested other kinds of water to make sure that this wasn't some sort of outlying result.
Yeah, so with KURE Water as a company, we have tested obviously other brands of water to see whether this has the same effect as KURE Water. We've tested tap water and nothing has the same effect because the question was, well, maybe it's just if you drink water, you're becoming more hydrated so the blood flows. But that's not the case. We've also tested KURE water by boiling it, to make a cup of tea and coffee, and that maintains the integrity of the nanobubbles as well. So we've done various testing around, KURE water versus, non-KURE water. And yeah, it's just the KURE water with the nanobubbles that have this effect on the blood.
And that right there is the crux of zeta potential, right?
Yes, the zeta potential is it's all based on the fact that the red blood cells, when we're talking about the blood, have this net negative charge. So everything sort of remains balanced in the blood. But when that zeta potential drops out with that net negative charge on the red blood cells, then that's when the cells start to coagulate and crash into each other. So it's a very, very important point, actually.
One of the things that we talk about a lot when we talk about oxygen is the way that it can support the immune system. Can you explain that a little bit to us, please? And perhaps especially the role of supplemental oxygen, that is oxygen over and above the oxygen that we get when we breathe in, when we inhale?
Yeah, sure. So the white blood cells, they rely on oxygen, a lot because obviously oxygen helps with the mitochondria to produce ATP energy, which white blood cells have mitochondria, and they need that energy to be able to be mobile, to move around the bloodstream, which is what they do. So they rely on oxygen as much as other things for that mobility to be able to do their job. As far as oxygen within the blood, a red blood cell has 250 molecules of hemoglobin, and each hemoglobin molecule carries 4 oxygen molecules. So one red blood cell has the capacity to hold 1 billion molecules of oxygen. So the introduction of KURE water into the body just allows that capacity to improve. Because it's getting oxygen from other places where potentially we're not breathing correctly.
Right.
A lot of people shallow breathe. I think I've already said that. So they're, almost like in a hyperventilated state if they're in fight or flight. So they're not really deep breathing and getting, pure, good oxygen levels within their body to really deliver oxygen around the body. So this is just another way KURE introduces oxygen into the body. So even if you're stressed and you're introducing oxygen, water, the body will perceive, also the brain will perceive the extra oxygen, and it will start calming the autonomic nervous system down. So, it has multiple benefits.
So that sounds like there might be some sort of indication for KURE in addressing emotional health as well.
Yeah, there has been studies on that as well with oxygen, because, when we're, as when we're upset, we don't breathe properly. And that triggers the brain into fight or flight as well. So, it's like a catch-22.
Now, how would you say KURE can contribute to increased energy levels? And you might kind of explain the way that oxygen works with our mitochondria as part of that. And specifically, what health conditions do you think at least might be partially alleviated by drinking KURE?
Yeah, okay. So obviously, we need oxygen to produce ATP, which is the energy from the cells that the mitochondria need. That mitochondria produce for energy. So a lack of oxygen, that's why we feel so fatigued, because we're not producing that energy within the cells. So that's very, very important. So lack of oxygen in the body, I mean, we know that cancer can't survive in the presence of oxygen. So lack of oxygen, at cellular level for tissue is, very detrimental to the health. So it could bring on, if we're continuously living in a stressful way and we're not breathing correctly, then this could lead on further down the road to creating diseases within ourselves, which is basically what happens. And things like, as I've already touched on, diabetes with poor circulation, helping with people who have compromised circulation. Your oxygen water would be very helpful. Even athletes, because the extra oxygen helps to remove acidity from the body. So lactic acid buildup, there's been studies done on that as well. So it's helping to, remove that lactic acid, so post-workout. So it has a multitude of benefits.
Wow. And so one of my kind of heroes at the moment is a fellow by the name of Gary Brecker. I don't know if you've seen much of Gary Brecker around, but he's a bit of an online phenomenon at the moment. And he posted some content quite recently about Alzheimer's. And basically he was saying that Alzheimer's, there's potentially a different way to look at it. And he was kind of describing it as potentially type 3 diabetes, which I think was absolutely fascinating. And what he brought that back to was the cells of the mitochondria's ability to produce ATP using oxygen. And he posited that the mitochondria has up to a 16x differential in terms of its potential performance. And so what do you think of that? What do you think about the role of oxygen for addressing things like Alzheimer's?
Well, yeah, well, definitely. And, type 3 diabetes has been named, as Alzheimer's. So again, looking at the energy production within the cell, when you're improving the energy production in the cell, then you're helping with detoxification as well. So Alzheimer's can be linked to, buildup of proteins in the brain. So again, if we're not clearing the brain from proteins as well, during the sort of lymphatic system, which happens when we sleep at night. So, and if we're not sleeping at night correctly, then this can also impact Alzheimer's. So, oxygen has a multitude of benefits, for approaching Alzheimer's at different levels. And if we're looking at improving detoxification, we know that, aluminium, for example, is linked with Alzheimer's as well. So there's a number of different reasons potentially why someone does get Alzheimer's.
Right.
But oxygen improvement in the brain can help with all those three, depending on which way we're looking at it.
Okay. Wow.
Because it's helping us sleep better as well. The more oxygen we have, as I said, it puts us back into the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yep.
So we're going to have better sleep.
Okay, wow, fascinating.
Yeah, so that can help with the clearing.
Sure. So one of the things that came out of this study that we just did with London South Bank University actually tested the transcutaneous oxygen content of the trial participants. And what it found is that the transcutaneous oxygen readings were indeed higher in the KURE group versus the control group, which for us is proof positive that the oxygen does indeed make its way into your body and then makes its way all the way to your skin. How does improved oxygen help with skin health?
It's helping with that circulation. It's helping to deliver oxygen and nutrients to tissue. And so it's helping with detoxification. So those three together would be helping skin health. And by improving oxygenation to the skin tissue as well, then we're helping to produce collagen as well. So there's been studies on that. So, and we know that a lot of children who have eczema, who've been drinking KURE water, their eczema has improved exponentially. So yeah, basically it's to do with the extra oxygen and the nutrients, speeding up the cellular turnover.
Yeah.
And taking away, inflammation and waste products.
Wow. The more you talk, the more it sounds like KURE is, the elixir of eternal youth. But I'm obviously being a bit tongue-in-cheek there, but do you think there are potential anti-aging benefits that might stem from drinking KURE? It's a huge claim. So if you do think that, I'm surely going to need you to back that up.
Well, no, definitely, because it's obviously giving you hydration, and hydration is very important for the skin. But just delivering extra oxygen is helping with cellular energy. And anything that's helping with cellular energy is going to help with detoxification. It's going to help with, and also delivering more nutrients. It's going to help with cellular health, basically.
Right.
So yeah, all over, inside, outside, everywhere.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, so practically speaking, how do I use KURE? How much KURE should I drink throughout the course of the day? And how long does it take for the benefits of KURE to actually become noticeable?
So to drinking KURE water, what we noticed is that after about 3 to 4 hours, the blood tends to go back to what it was. So I would say drinking KURE water morning, afternoon and evening, 500 mils, 3 times a day.
The science is in on lots of kinds of oxygen therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, for instance. Problem with hyperbaric oxygen therapy is, it's great, right? You might get a huge surge of oxygen into your system, but the oxygen's gone a short time later. And also, it's expensive. A 90-minute session can cost you upwards of $700. So how would you describe the effectiveness of KURE Oxygen Water against, say, the use of a hyperbaric chamber, for instance?
Yeah, so I know there's been studies done on that, and they've shown that actually the oxygen level in the body is more superior drinking oxygen water than it is actually going to hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So also we know that in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, as you said, it's shorter lived. It's not something that's going to continue to, be improved. So by drinking oxygen water continuously, I always say it's like a drip effect. It's what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Has the most improvement in your health. It's consistency. So by drinking oxygen water daily, you are continuously bringing oxygen to the tissue and improving nutrient delivery and detoxification. So it's a win-win, like a continuous, as opposed to going one day,
one-off,
one-off, maybe once a week or once a fortnight.
Yes.
Yeah, you're not getting that continuous delivery.
Continual top up. And that's why we describe KURE as an oxygen supplement, and no longer, do you have to spend hundreds of dollars on a hyperbaric chamber. You can actually get just as good a result, potentially a better result, simply by drinking, a 2-pound bottle of water. which is a pretty incredible thing. You know, one of the real challenges for us, I think, is to effectively explain to people why KURE Oxygen Water is just so manifestly different to every other water on the planet, including other so-called oxygen waters. With other products, of course, even products that pertain to have oxygen in them, you take off the lid, the oxygen, of course, weighs less than the H2O molecule. And so the second you remove the lid, all of that oxygen that may or may not be in the bottle in the first place simply gases off. That means it ends up being pretty similar to normal water. Would you think that's a fair analysis? And what do you think that means for the speed and efficiency with which KURE will hydrate you compared to other waters on the market?
Yeah, so because it is a stable oxygen molecule, nanobubble, of oxygen, this is having a positive effect on the zeta potential of the blood. So the blood is picking up that oxygen in a way, a superior way, and delivering that oxygen around the body, which is helping with hydration.
And so what do you think that means? I mean, we've spoken a lot about performance, we've spoken a lot about recovery, but what does it mean for the broader community beyond professional and competitive athletes? Do you think, for instance, KURE might support someone who is preparing for surgery?
Yeah, I think there has been some studies done on the surgery aspect, and definitely drinking KURE water post-surgery is going to help with the speed up of your recovery and healing. Because obviously, if we're delivering oxygen nutrients to tissue, then we're going to be speeding up that recovery.
Yeah, wow, absolutely fascinating. So, final question. How differently do you feel about KURE now versus that day that you were first approached by KURE? And is this a product that you would feel comfortable recommending to your friends and family?
Well, I have been recommending KURE water for a number of years now. Yeah, so from that very first day where I wasn't sure what to expect, and I saw the immediate change in the blood, I knew this was, a special product. So definitely, KURE water is beneficial for everybody, really. All ages. Especially, I think, people who have circulation problems, because this is the main thing that we see the benefit with, is helping with circulation. It's changing any coagulation or rouleau formation in the blood.
Amazing. Well, Caroline Mansfield, thank you so much for joining us on the KURE Lab here today. It's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. And I always just get blown away by looking at this kind of thing and seeing that blood under the nano microscope. It really is extraordinary. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.